Good morning. It is Monday, August the 3rd, 2020. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and the Kerr County Commissioners Court is now in session. If anybody wants to call in for a comment, the telephone number is 830-792-6161. It's sitting right here on the bench. First part of the agenda is for public input. This is an opportunity for the public to address the court, tell us anything that you want to talk to us about. We limit your time to 3 minutes. The thing about the input is if you want to talk to us about something that's on the agenda, we ask that you wait until that agenda item is called. So is there anyone that would like to address the court at this time? Okay. There being none, then we'll go to Commissioner's comments.
Yeah, okay. We had some excitement in Precinct 2. Good news is we had 1 3/4 rain. I think a lot of people got a lot of rain. We lifted the burn ban as a result from that on Saturday morning. I think we had a tornado go through the area around the airport. On Peterson Farm Road, there were 7 power poles down, 18 hours without electricity in the local area. Damage at the airport, I think a hangar door, some jets messed around. I think hangar door damaged a couple of aircraft in Brinkman Hangar. So lots of weather excitement, and other than that, things are good.
Good. 3.
We had about an inch of rain, which is not as much as other areas, but we were happy to get it, so I'm not going to complain about that. A little bit further on the airport, the damage to the aircraft was pretty significant. One of the aircraft, anyway, was really damaged quite bad. I don't know a whole lot about aircraft from the standpoint of repairs, but evidently it's a big deal on what was damaged with that aircraft. But anyway, all that's being working through our insurance. Other thing, this is kind of bringing up that it's kind of almost, it's a sad thing in my mind. Karen told me this morning about a friend of hers that called or emailed her, and it was somebody that was at a local convenience store, basically around 534, and it was a lady wearing a Trump hat of some sort, and was basically assaulted by 3 young people in there for wearing the hat. And then her gentleman got out to try to help her, and then he was beat up some. The people at the store tried to help, and then I saw the sheriff knocking his head, so I know that they were aware of it. Called the police. I don't know if they called them or not. But it's really sad. You hear about this in other big urban areas primarily, but the fact that it happens in Kerr really hits close to home, and it's just a sad thing in my mind.
Yes, it is. Good.
Wow.
Okay. 4.
Well,
I suspect out-of-towners.
well, I hope so, and I hope they have some consequences for it. I was out of town most of the weekend. Of course, Friday night got a pleasant surprise. I only got 3/4 of an inch, but I was tickled to death with that. And I haven't got any reports from much of the other part of the county out west because we were out of town most of it. So that's about all I got.
Okay. 1.
We got 2.5 inches of rain.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Oh God! The one goes last always
2.5
gets.
inches of rain.
Yeah, we had a tornado.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, I'm just telling you what we got. So that was at our house, and had a lot of rain. It rained real hard for quite a while, and I actually burned one of my brush piles. And then we had, of course, the sad news is we had another death from the drunk driver hitting the motorcyclist. And then they came, I don't know if any of you saw them, there was a bunch of them that came down Highway 16 in a tribute ride and stopped there at the site. So they were assisted by Kerrville Police Department, Sheriff's Department, and the Highway Patrol. And so we need to remember those families in our prayers and the ones that are still hospitalized.
Sure.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, very good. Then let's move on to the consideration agenda. Item 1.1 has been 1.1 now for months, and this is a report on COVID-19. And for those of you that approach and speak from the podium, you are permitted to take your mask off, just like Deb just did. So.
Morning, Judge, morning, Commissioners. Commissioner Lance, glad to have you back. We're just going to after our conversation with you, Judge, last week, we're going to just go through the numbers this morning a little bit. And we'll stick with just primarily local numbers. National and state numbers, I don't think really matter much anymore. I think it's more about us locally and how we're going to manage that. For COVID-19 data, total tested by Peterson Regional Medical Center as of Friday, 5 o'clock, was 3,767. We've had a total of 383 COVID positive patients. 7 were hospitalized. Our active cases are 34, recovered cases are 331. We've had 6 fatalities. The last one was notified us last week. I don't have any information on their ages or anything of that nature, just that we are up to 6. There's a graph in there. It's kind of, it's been put in there since May the 6th. And you can see about the latter part of June, we started getting an increase. This is kind of crammed in there, so it's not really, you can't really tell the spike as much as you could if it was a bigger graph. But mid-June, we had a spike, and I think right now, just from looking at Pearson's numbers over the last week, what they submitted to me, I think we're trying to level off a little bit. Hopefully, we'll level off, and then we'll start to see a decline.
Dub, what is Series 1, 2, and 3?
Well, that's if you're, Series 1 is actually, if you're using the graphing on Microsoft Word, that's what you use for putting in your data. So Series 1 is just basically the blue line there. If I was going to put in something else like recoveries, that would be Series 2. You'd see a line for that.
So we just ignore that?
Yeah, just ignore that.
Okay.
Our transmission methods basically are still the same, and we're going to see more of Texas Health Trace investigations in the data sheet that I get from DSHS. So at some point, we're not going to be getting any more information about whether it was close contact, travel related, or whatever. As far as Kerr County goes, it's pretty much just community spread and close contact at this point. Age data, less than 1, we're still at 0, 1 to 9 is 6, 10 to 19 years of age is 15, 41 people between the years of 20 and 29, 42 from 30 to 39, 40 to 49 is 34, and then 50 to 59 is 34, 60 to 64, 22, and then it starts to drop back off. For above 65 years old, we get 10, 70 to 74 is 11, 75 to 79, and 80 plus, we've started to see an increase there recently. We're up to 10 individuals at this time.
And what's noteworthy on those statistics is those are cases from PRMC only.
That's
Right.
Peterson Regional only, yes, sir.
Well,
It's actual numbers of cases, not percentages.
That's
So
correct.
the people following this.
And that's actual numbers. Yeah, we've had 26 people, or 15 people that were between the ages of 10 and 19, and so forth and so on. So you can see it starts to rise. The older you get, we get to from 20 to 29, so from about 20 to 64 is where the majority of our cases are at right now.
It says 18% over 65 is what that amounts to.
As far as testing goes, and then we're going to have free COVID testing again. Is going to be this Wednesday from 8 till 4 at the Hill Country Youth Event Center. Curative Incorporated will be here to conduct those tests. It will be the swab, cheek swab. Folks are not required to have an appointment or a doctor's prescription or anything like that. They can just show up and come in. I'll be meeting with those folks sometime today or tomorrow. We'll talk about how we're going to set up. But it is from 8 to 4 and on Wednesday. And I'll be doing a code red tomorrow throughout the county to remind folks.
Yeah, that's on national news. They're encouraging people not to be tested just to be tested, but if you have symptoms. Is that the case here?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Unless you're displaying some of those symptoms or you feel sick or ill, you've lost your taste or smell, headache,
Right. Some symptom before you go
some
get
symptom
tested.
that we've been advertising, then I would come down and get tested.
Good.
What's the cost per test?
This is free.
You know, somebody's paying for it.
Well,
Oh, we're paying for it.
we're paying
Yeah,
for
what's
it.
it costing us?
I have no
Per test.
idea. I can probably try and find out for you.
It probably.
So it comes off the money tree in the back? Is
Sure.
that how we're paying
Yeah,
for
you
it?
know it's growing.
Yeah, okay.
It's the money tree in
Just not
Washington.
growing in my yard.
One more question about the
Yes,
test. Now, there's talk that there's a coronavirus test and a COVID test that's specific, because there's a lot of coronaviruses, and there's been some confusion. I don't know if it's misinformation or if it's correct. But are these tests specifically for COVID-19?
Yes, these are supposed to be COVID-19 tests for active viruses, not the antibody test.
Okay. That's all.
That's a comment, Mr. Moore, for the public. When it says loss of taste, that's really not what my family's experience, not what it is. It's a change in taste. You can taste things, but it tastes weird, or doesn't taste like it, you know. For me, and it only happened one time with one meal for me, but I ate pizza. It just didn't taste like pizza normally tastes.
So does it change your taste?
It's a
Like
change
for,
of taste.
like,
Yeah.
Sweets change?
Right.
Or,
It just tasted funny to me. In Karen's
You didn't enjoy it.
situation, she had ordered sweet tea and she tasted it and she couldn't tell if it was sweet or not sweet. So it's just really a change. You could taste it was tea. She just couldn't taste the sweetness. For me, it was different. So it's an abnormal taste
Just all
as much to a loss of taste is what I think. And other people I've talked to, that's kind of really the way it is. But it is definitely a taste difference is noticeable.
Well, it's good to know you're the first person that I talked to that's actually had it.
Yeah.
So, and can testify.
I'm a good guinea pig.
What is
That's pretty strong testimony. You're around the county a lot, and that's the first person you've talked to. Yeah.
Social distancing, Commissioner.
Right,
social
well, that's
distancing.
good.
And I think the other thing that you said, I think to Mr. Moses' question about who should get tested. You know, symptoms, yes, like, you know, if you have them. But the other thing is, if you're happen to know that you've been around somebody close, then it's a good reason to get
Right.
tested. You know, and they never did any question as to how I got it. So I think I'm glad that you're going to carry that information, because I don't think that's irrelevant. But I can probably figure out where I got it. It was from another contractor from Houston. And start looking at the dates and percentages of when you probably got it and all that. And that person, I was around for probably less than 30 seconds.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. But so I think a lot of the information. I think you know they say you see at 15 minutes within 6 feet. You know, I don't think that's real accurate for Karen or I. I think that you're around it, and for whatever reason you're unlucky and you happen to get enough of it in you to infect
Okay.
you. But being around someone, I think, is another reason to get tested.
So I think if you're symptomatic or you've been in close contact with somebody you believe may have had it, or you know they've had it,
Right.
then I would go get tested.
But not just so you can tell your neighbors and friends you've had the test. Because you take the test today, you get exposed tomorrow. I mean, you can't just constantly keep doing that. It should really matter.
Right.
You're gonna take the test.
And we're gonna continue to try to have testing here as much as possible, and I can put out, when I see from the DSHS Region 8 update that there's gonna be testing here locally or close by, then we're posting that as well. Fredericksburg, Bernie, I had a lady email me last week or 2 weeks ago. We had a son who needed surgery, and he had to have a test real quick. She drove all the way to Cotulla to get the test. So,
Wow.
Wow.
um,
Of all places.
yes,
Yeah.
she needed it done pretty quick, so.
That's a long way.
The testing's going on, we're just posting where you can get it.
Sure.
And the other thing that's interesting is the antibody test. This came from doctors, not from me. The doctors that I've talked about all this, is that the antibodies seem to last 2 to 3 months, and that's about it. And there are
Really?
definite places in Kendall County, according to the doctor, that said that they at their clinic have had people get it twice, and it was about a 3-month period between. So, and the antibody test only is accurate, they say, for 2 to 3 months. So the antibodies definitely drop off pretty quick.
No, we're gonna have a blood drive tomorrow at the Youth Event Center. It's supposed to have, unless it's been called off. Okay, I'm just wondering if they're gonna do any of that. That's actually, they're looking for people with the antibody to give blood.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you knew anything
That's
about
good to know,
that.
if it is there, because I was asked if I would consider donating because of that. I do have a lot of antibodies right now. And I said I would, and I called and I said I had to go to San Antonio. And I thought, I'm not going to San Antonio to do it.
There's
but
plenty in
here.
San Antonio that can do it.
Who's sponsoring
The South Texas Blood Tissue Center.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Doug?
Thank you.
Okay,
the, all right,
thanks.
y'all have a good week.
Yes, sir.
Too.
The second item on the agenda is the same that it is every Monday these days, and that is any discussion regarding interest in terminating the state of disaster order that I entered back in March. Okay, there being no discussion on that, we'll go to item 1.3, which is to receive, consider, and discuss public input related to the Meadowbrook Retirement Community Manufacturing Housing Rental Community Development Plan, Phase 1, located at State Highway 27 in Hoot Owl Hollow, Precinct 4. Okay, let's see. Let's start off with, I think, I want to call on the county attorney. Last week, I was asked the question about why we couldn't enforce our existing regulations regarding manufactured housing rental community. I get it, MRHC? Okay, something like that. MHRC, I guess it is.
Manufactured home rental.
And I gave an off-the-cuff response, but we did go back and talk to our county attorney, who also talked to our lawyer in Austin to make sure that we were right on this. And I was going to ask Jason Sorensen if he would to give us a report on exactly why we can't enforce that over 20-year-old regulation.
Sure thing, Judge. And am I mic'd over here? Or do I need to get
Over there.
You can talk loud.
The mic's right here.
All right.
This one picks up most of it.
Well, people can hear me.
Jason, you might take that mask off for while you're speaking.
Okay, so there's a lot of information, so I want to have this computer up here so that y'all can see why we think what we think and sort of what we're talking about.
Okay.
So, first things first, Meadowbrook is a manufactured home rental community, and the statute treats that differently than subdivisions. So let's go to Local Government Code 232. Now, there's a law library somewhere in this building. I think it's over there across from the district clerks. But honestly, these days, I just use Google because it's quicker, and the state's got all these laws up there on their website. So if you just Google Local Government Code 232, that very first result is this thing right here. Now, this is the whole chapter, and there's a lot of information in here. But for now, we're just concerned about 232.007. This is the section that regulates mobile home communities. And that's a specific legal term. You can see what it is here, that it's not really relevant today. Oh, what did I do?
Jason, we can't read that. If you think we can.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh,
This is, I've got it here, what you sent us.
okay, good.
Everybody got this, right? The email from Jason?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, so if folks are following along on YouTube, or if they want to look this
Okay.
up for themselves, this will be in the minutes of the meeting. So they'll be on the county's
Sure.
website for perpetuity if y'all want to look this stuff up.
Good.
But so we can kind of follow along. Section B, right there, says a manufactured home rental community is not a subdivision. And so those sections, you see, we're quite a bit of ways into the statute here, and we're just now talking about this. This section just says everything that came before doesn't apply to manufactured homes. So subsection C is what gives the county commissioners the authority to regulate these parks in the unincorporated area of the county. So we did that back in 2000. The county adopted mobile home I'm going to keep messing that up, and folks, I apologize.
Just call it mobile home parks. We know what we're talking about.
Okay, adopted regulations for the mobile home parks. And so, going back to our handy dandy Google, if you just Google Kerr County manufactured home regulations, that the second result that comes up are going to be the regulations for the manufactured home community.
Now, this is rental communities in particular, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is a difference.
That is a core component of the statutory definition. So C is what gives the county the authority to adopt these regulations. However, sub D says right here that the court may not adopt minimum infrastructure standards that are more stringent than it requires of subdivisions. And that's where we're gonna come back to that in a minute. But if we switch over to the mobile home regulations, the troublemaker right here, as far as we're concerned today, is this 104A2. And this specific requirement here saying that the post-construction flow has to be 50%, 75%.
Water flow.
Right.
Storm drainage flow.
Okay.
Water that comes
You
off the
just said
drainage water.
Okay.
Sure. So if pre-construction, it drains 150 cubic feet a second. In the 2-year floodplain, under this regulation, once they're done with construction, they'd be required to drain 75 cubic feet of water. And that's the issue, or that's what the mobile home regs said.
Well, but to be clear, Jason, the mobile home regs are 20 years old,
Correct.
they're outdated,
Correct.
and they're not in compliance with our subdivision rules, and they're not in compliance with the state law.
Well, so this part doesn't get treated by the subdivision rules at all unless the mobile home regs specifically adopt the subdivision.
Now I'm totally
reg.
confused. We're talking about a reg that's not in effect anymore?
No, this is currently in effect. So this was the regulation that Meadowbrook came in, or rather, Mr. Hastings came in asking for the variance. So the regulation as written, and that's currently still on the books, requires the developer to reduce once they're done building the thing, they have to reduce the amount of water that drains off the property.
By 50%.
In the 2-year floodplain, it's 50%.
Depending on the circumstances.
Exactly.
It's a graduated scale,
Exactly that.
but it's more restrictive than the subdivision rules.
And that's just where I was headed, Judge. If we Google the Kerr County subdivision regulations, this is the first thing that comes up. Now, these were adopted in 2007, and these are a lot longer, and it's a lot more complicated because they cover a much broader range of topics. So I'm just going to skip over to.
And while you're doing that, just so that the public knows, we are currently in the process of revising those subdivision rules. And almost had it completed before the COVID-19, but we'll get it completed here just as soon as we can.
So this whole section, this is 506. These are the subdivision regulations that would, for everything that's a subdivision that isn't a manufactured home rental community, these are the rules they had to follow. Now, I had to check with Charlie to figure out which one of these would apply to Meadowbrook. But according to him, it's this provision here that would require them to maintain 0 net change when they're done construction versus when they started. So, and that's what the variance.
And again, just trying to clarify so that people understand, there's the natural lay of the land, you compute what that drainage would be.
Yes.
And then if you alter the natural lay of the land, then you have to figure out how much additional drainage is coming, and the landowner then has to accommodate that additional water.
Right, and there's all kinds of
And
engineering.
not let any more than what was under the natural condition flow onto the neighbor's land.
But it can't be more stringent for the mobile home park than for a regular subdivision.
That's right.
That's exactly right, Commissioner, and that's the issue that we're in today. Because right now, this subsection D of 23207 of the local government code says that the mobile home regulation we have right now is unlawful.
Right.
And so that's what's on the book, and we're in kind of a pickle here. We need to fix that.
Outline that again on what you just said.
Okay,
That
sure.
report, it's part of the mobile home rules.
Yeah.
So
This is state law that says that this is unlawful. And so, as far as this specific provision, I know that we had wanted to fast track this almost last year, and then COVID and some other things just came up. But just so folks are aware, this isn't something that we just kind of came up with because we're in a lawsuit. Like I said, these regulations were adopted back in 2000.
What happens is you start researching them when you're in a lawsuit.
Well, point well taken there, Commissioner. So if you go back, these are, I should have been narrating that, but if you just Google the Kerr County Commissioners Court, you can go to our website, and we're here in August of 2020, and right here on our website are the minutes from our hearing from Monday, November 27th, 2000. Looks like they used to have them in the evenings. I'm glad we don't do that anymore. So if you look at, so starting on page 65 is back then when they started talking about the mobile home regs. Yep. So you can see Judge Haneke, he was the county judge at the time. And at the time, there was apparently a lot of litigation when it came to the width of roads. So I think what happened is that just kind of got lost in there. So, like I said, we're talking about the road business. Going cross-eyed now, looking at it. All right, see right back here. David Motley, who was the county attorney at the time, said right here that he wasn't sure that there's a difference, and that this was probably more restrictive. I want to make sure I highlight this so I'm not just putting words into his mouth. He's citing here that he thinks there's an issue with the mobile home regs because they're more restrictive than what this was 20 years ago. The county attorney said that, hey, I don't know that this complies with the statute, and just the road litigation took up all the oxygen, and the rules ended up getting adopted without addressing that issue.
So Jason, let me see if I can summarize.
Okay.
Subdivision rules say that stormwater leaving a property cannot be any greater than it was before the development.
Correct. For
Number one.
this size.
Number one.
For this size.
Okay. Fact number one. Fact number two, mobile home regulation says you can't be more restrictive than subdivision regulations.
The state law says the mobile
Okay,
home.
I don't want all the numbers, okay? Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so those two things are true. It says that mobile home, before you develop, got a storm drain of a certain amount. After you develop, the same storm drain cannot be any greater than that.
Well,
Is that right?
no. The manufactured home regs say you have to reduce.
Says you have to reduce by 50%.
Depending.
It depends, but yes, in every case you have to reduce.
You have to reduce.
Yes.
For mobile homes.
Yes,
Okay. Huh.
and that's the problem.
So that's the problem.
Yes.
So
And that's
is
illegal.
that, is that
That's-
still in effect?
It's on the books, but
So, no, I don't care about books. Is it in effect?
well, so we would be the entity charged with enforcing that regulation.
Okay, so
and
we're-
I don't think I could recommend enforcing that regulation.
But is it required to enforce it?
State law says it's not, you cannot enforce it because it's stricter than state law allows.
Okay, I see. Okay, all right, gotcha.
That's why Charlie came to us to begin with.
And there are a lot of laws we have on the books that we don't enforce.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to keep this really simple.
Right,
Okay.
and so that's the issue with the mobile home regs. And there's a process in place for reviewing those. We need to do that at the very least for this 104A2
Okay.
so we can fix that.
So in light of this development today, what are we required to enforce?
Well,
Or what, in your judgment, what would your counsel be for us to enforce?
if you're asking council, I prefer we save that for executive. If I'm
No,
giving-
it's a straightforward question.
But so the question right now, so we don't work for the developer and the developer doesn't work for them. It's really their decision what
Now,
level
from
of
this
risk.
court, what should we enforce?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to enforce the law.
Hey,
And the
which
law
is-
is not more restrictive.
Not more restrictive.
Not
Okay,
more
got it.
restrictive.
That's all I was looking for, Judge. Okay, good.
I mean,
Enforce
they can give us
that-
all the advice they want, but as an
Right.
elected official, I'm voting that we're going to enforce the law.
Okay,
Period.
which is not more restrictive than
That's right.
subdivision.
So
And it means all those restrictions that are in there are not, they're not in compliance with state law, and so we don't try to enforce it.
Okay,
Well,
good.
do we need to, don't we need to fix that?
We're in the process.
Yes.
We are in the
Yeah.
process.
Hopefully
Okay,
have
so
it
if
done
we
by the end
fix
of the month.
that, right now, we can just ignore it, but it really needs to be fixed for future.
Right, and so
Exactly.
that's a good dovetail to the process for approving the development plan. So the county engineer is the person who's empowered by the statute to approve or reject
He's
development.
our authorized designated representative.
Correct. So when he approves a plan, what he's certifying to the court is that the plan as submitted meets the minimum state infrastructure standards and it complies with our local regulations.
Okay.
That's the reason that he came to get the variance, because he was going to have to certify that this plan complied, and it didn't with respect to the specific provision.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So for mobile home parks, the engineer has 60 days to take action from the time that the developer submits their plan. He can approve it, or he can reject it, or he can hold on to it. If he rejects the plan, he has to state in writing what the developer needs to do to fix the property.
Right.
If he takes no action, after 60 days, the plan gets approved automatically, regardless of whether or not it complies with the
Okay.
rules.
By operation of law.
Exactly right.
Okay.
I think there were some divisions that were just sticking these things in a drawer and forgetting about them. So they put that in there to really put the onus on the county
Got it.
to take action on them.
Jason, did you cover whether, this was 2000?
Yes, sir.
correct? That this happened. Did the state law change after this, or were we always in line?
I looked into that, and like as Motley pointed out in the meetings, the prohibition on more restrict dates back to '89, and it was last amended in '99. So it was already on the books.
Yeah.
I looked into that.
Well, and in fact, the Texas Water Code requires this of all land, all your neighbors. I've got a permanent injunction on somebody out in West Kerr County that I put on them back in 2003 because they were diverting more water onto their neighbor than they should have.
Exactly, and there are private causes of action that are distinct
Yes.
from county regulation of what the minimum standards are.
Mm-hmm.
And so the county minimum standards are what the engineers have to hold the development plan to.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so,
But the concept has been around from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
absolutely.
To go to your question, Commissioner Blue, that whole statute related to manufactured rental communities was new about 98, 99. That's what it was brand new to the county. We tried us, and I don't recall the details. I don't know how we ended up with those drainage calculations. I have no recollection of that. But I mentioned before there was litigation, and it was actually not against Kerr County. I misspoke before. I talked to the former president of the association, and they said no, it was against actually a municipality, but it impacted our rules and other rules, and it came to roads, is where a lot of the lawsuit was on that. It was also on utilities primarily. No one caught that our drainage was skewed, but there was a lot of litigation, and that's why we were focused on the roads, because it came into fire trucks and that type of thing was the reason for a lot of the litigation and the issues. And that was the reason that the statute was originally passed, was so that municipalities and counties could, get emergency services into these communities. So, and I'm guessing that all that happened and we just missed it. Then we do so few of these locally. We should have looked at it in 2003 when we did an update, 2007, but we didn't, because we hadn't. It's kind of a separate set of rules.
Well, we're doing it in 2020.
Yeah, we're doing it now. And we should have done it before, but it's just slipped through.
Like most things, you don't think about it until an issue comes up.
Right. And we're in the process of looking at them all right now. We just hadn't got to it because everything got put on hold.
Yeah.
But the key phrase, as I understand it, is equal to, drainage equal to, pre-construction, post-construction equal to. And the other phrase is 0% increase. Those are the phrases most commonly used in the industry.
Okay.
So it stays the same.
In the industry, and we can't, bottom line is, we can't be more restrictive than what the state law is.
Correct. And when the plans get submitted to the engineer, he's not asked, would he prefer a better plan if he has other ideas. It's, does this plan as submitted comply with the minimum standards and the local regulations?
Gotcha.
That's the only question he gets asked. That's the only question.
And Jason, one last question for you. We ask you to go to our expert firm in Austin that handles these things for us, the Bickerstaff firm. And did you bounce this off them?
So Heather was the one who spoke to Mr. Kimbrough, so maybe she can speak to that. But my understanding is he agreed with our assessment.
Now, my understanding is he confirmed everything that we've been saying.
That's right.
Okay, good. So that's where the county is.
Right, and that's everything drainage related. But
I just wanted to say before we hear from everybody that we're not here, because this is the law, we're not here to call into question the wisdom of the law. That's not our We have nothing to say about that. It is the law.
Absolutely correct.
I
And
just
that's-
wanted to throw that out there.
And that's a good chance to sort of dovetail into the OSSF part of this, because this isn't related to the lawsuit.
Tell everybody what OSS stands for.
Absolutely. So that's the term for the septic systems that get installed in these properties.
On-site septic sewage facility, right?
Right.
The letters change whenever I try to think about it.
On-site sewage or septic facility.
Right.
On-site sewage facility.
Sewage, on-site sewage facility.
Yeah, OSSF.
Okay, so these are, so the OSSF, or the septic permitting
Now we've
process.
gone from stormwater to septic water.
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
Wastewater. Stormwater to
All
wastewater.
right, good enough, yeah.
Correct. So the septic permitting process works a lot like the development plan process and is included as one of those components. The developer prepares all these materials, they hire surveyors, they hire subcontractors to go out there and
The
just.
higher sanitation engineers.
I believe
Yes.
so.
Yes, they do.
And so they prepare all these materials to submit. And the same question gets asked of environmental health is, does this plan meet state minimum standards and does it meet local regulations? And if it does, they have to approve the permit. They don't have any discretion or to offer input. So this is an aerial photo.
Judge, let me comment on that. And our local rules are exactly the same as state rules for OSSF.
Yes.
Sure.
There's no variance whatsoever between those two.
Right. And so this is an aerial photo of Meadowbrook with the development plan overlaid to scale, as well as the actual placing of where they put in their drain pipes and their drain fields. Now, there are 4 tanks and there are 4 drain fields, and the lots are color-coded based on where they're going to go. So this is 27 right here, and down here is Johnston Creek. And this little green dotted line is what's called the setback line. State law says you can't have a drain field within 75 feet of the bank of the creek. And that's based on the survey and the state definition of, I think it's normal water level at the most. There's a table that says what it is, but it's a standardized definition. They don't just get to pick where the bank is. So this is a setback, and as I don't know if y'all can, it's probably not showing up very clear on here. So I can't tell if that's dry or rocky, but the setback is based on the bank, and this green dotted line follows through the bank of the river. And if you can, this southwest drain field is the one that's the closest to the creek bank, and the eastern portion of that is 346 feet from the bank of the creek, and the western portion is 332 feet from the bank of the creek. The other 2 drain fields are 500 and 600 that are on the creek side, and then there's one that's on the 27th side that's well out.
Jason, just for the public,
Yes,
drain fields are where the sewer water goes back into the ground.
absolutely.
Here, just
So,
independent of how it does it, those purple areas are where the sewer water is going back into the land.
right.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Some people call them leach fields.
Yes.
Right.
And the
Drain
closest
field, leach
one
field.
is over 4 times state requirements,
yeah,
distance-wise.
the closest one is 332 feet, which is 250 some feet further back than it needs to be.
Correct.
And just so everyone knows, these pipes are underground. I think they're about 5 feet.
They just go into the ground.
They're deep enough that the water's not supposed to reach the surface, but they're not deep enough that it affects the groundwater.
Right.
So if folks do see ponding effluent, and you'll know it when you smell it, but if you see ponding effluent, if you see structures going up over those drain fields, if you see trucks driving over there, call environmental health. They are the police when it comes to septic violators, and we depend on y'all to be our public eyes and ears for, especially out in the west part of the county. But we prosecute septic violators.
Correct.
So if y'all are concerned about that, that's.
So just in summary, Jason, sanitation engineers, licensed sanitation engineers, looked at this, developed the plan, said with those drain fields and that amount of sewer water going into there, it will not percolate up, it will not contaminate groundwater.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct. So I've already taken up a good chunk of the court's time. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer those. I can hang tight.
You might hang tight.
All right then.
Well, I appreciate, the public need to know what the legal issues are. And so what we've got here is some old regulations that we don't enforce because they violate state law, and we haven't corrected them yet, amended them yet. We're in the process of doing those this month, and we'll have the subdivisions probably done shortly after. So we'll have a whole new set of rules in place here within a very short while.
But right now, we're operating under the existing.
Yes.
Right.
And the reason for the variance was in order to comply with state law.
Right.
We're operating under the existence unless we're in an area that we're not in compliance with state law, in which case state law trumps our
Right.
rules.
Good.
Right.
Okay.
And that's important because
Yeah.
there are some other areas in our subdivision rules that we're not in compliance, such as our rules say 60 days on subdivisions, and it's 30 days now because state
Right.
law changed
Okay.
last September.
Good. Okay.
And it takes so
It sounds like the mobile park people have very good lobbyists in Austin.
Well, when everybody should be treated the same.
Exactly.
Okay.
They shouldn't have to have any lobbyists.
Okay. Now, we don't have an action item on the agenda, but we do have a consideration item. And so I want to talk to the people that are upstairs listening to this. We're going to start calling people down who want to address the court. We've got a list here. I think I've got 17 people on this list so far. And we'll bring them down in what, 3 at a time, Sheriff?
Well, a lot of them want to yield their minutes to the other person. So if you tell me which one to speak, I'll bring
Okay.
that person down. But if he's one that's just wanting to yield, I'll bring the person.
Well, they're
down
watching.
to
We
yield.
can just announce the
Yeah.
names.
I'll do that here in just a minute. But as far as yielding minutes, I've got 2 phones up here, both of which are set on 3-minute timers. And what we'll do is start the timer, and if people want to yield, we'll see if 3 people want to yield to one, so that'd be 4 3-minute slots. Then we'll have 12 minutes, and we'll follow it that way. Does everybody understand how we're going to do the timing?
Yeah.
Okay, and we've not limited what they can talk about. We've tried to make this pretty open. So if they want to talk about septic, they can talk about septic. If they want to talk about water, wastewater, drainage water, if they want to talk about water wells, water systems, if they want to talk about archaeological concerns,
Flooding, whatever.
flooding, the whole thing, the topic is wide open. So I'm going to read off the first 4 names that I've got on here are Patrick Quinn, Linda Peacock, Jerry Royce Price, and then I'm going to call 5, Sean Henderson and Aubrey Henderson. Those 5. And I did that because I know the Hendersons are going to yield minutes to one another. So,
Yes.
okay. And for those of you at home, we have the large courtroom upstairs where we have social distancing all marked off. Those people are waiting up there and are being called down in order when they signed up to speak. So, and the sheriff is the bailiff shuttling them back and forth.
And they're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, they're watching on
proceedings.
YouTube.
Several of these people are yielding to each other. So Mr. Quinn's going to yield to another lady that's not among the first 5.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
believe one among the first 5, the ones that are going to speak, would be Mr. Henderson. Which one's going to speak? Okay. Aubrey's going to speak first. He's your number 5. And I believe his son is going to yield, Sean's going to yield to him.
And then there's another, this man's gonna yield. I'm gonna yield to it.
Okay, so you are who? Mark Morrison and Sean Henderson are yielding to Aubrey Henderson.
That gives you 9.
And Jerry
Okay.
Price is yielding to Aubrey Henderson.
Just a second. What we're going to ask you to do is give us your name and your address, and once you've done that, then I'm going to start the 3 minutes. And what we're going to do is you've got up to 9 minutes now, so we'll have 3 of these, okay?
You said that there was a Mr. Price that also.
There's 4 of them.
This
Yeah,
Jerry Royce Price?
Mr. Price is yielding to Aubrey, Sean's yielding to Aubrey, and another
Mark Morrison.
yielding to Aubrey.
Mark Morrison, I've got it.
Mark Morrison.
And then Aubrey's got his own 3
And
minutes.
Aubrey, so you got his own.
Aubrey, you can take that off while you.
Yeah, I know. Judge, are you gonna let me know when we get to that, towards the end, or I don't run over? or-
Yep, I am.
So he'll have 12
So-
minutes.
So I'm not going to start the time until after you give me your name and address.
Aubrey Henderson, 4035 Junction Highway, Ingram, Texas.
Okay, you may begin.
Okay, good morning. I'd like to talk first about flooding. Start with the 1932 flood. My family came here in 1857, so I think even though I wasn't here in 32, generations, I know what my great-grandfather said to my grandfather and mine as I lay on. In 1932, in Mount Home, and the 2-story building there at the Texas camp, I think Catholic camp, I believe it. The water was the 2-story. As we come on down, all that project that we're talking about already was underwater. My grandfather said right there on the corner. All that was underwater in 1930. The old saying was it was from mountain to mountain, the whole valley. When I say the valley, I mean from Mount Home to Ingram. Johnson Creek could not get in 1932. There was no way. That's why Lower Ingram was underwater, and it put cypress trees all the way to T.J. Moore's store, where the murals are, right there by the road. All that was underwater, completely underwater. In 1932, Hunt washed away. The reason Hunt washed away is because the South Fork could not do it because the North Fork had already come down. No way. So Hunt took it completely out. In 1932, right outside here, you can go see the pictures for a time and still think you have one. It was sloshing underneath this bridge, completely underneath this bridge. Where Ken Stoke before it is, all that was all underwater. The Shriners, they called that the Shriner Fields. And before that was ever good. Now, we don't know. Mother Nature, we don't know when that next flood, when that tropical disturbance is going to come, a hurricane. That's when we get those 35. I seen in 1987 at my house 34 inches. 17 inches one night, 17 inches the next night. That field down there that I plowed was underwater. I lost my crops, I lost my hay, everything. But I'm here to tell you today, gentlemen, I'd rather lose a crop of hay than lose those people down there. You're talking about old people you're going to put down there? Let's put them down. Let's put them down. Okay. We have Hoot Owl Hollow Road. All my kinfolks live on there. The dry contributaries that are on the other side. Now we're talking about dry draws. You know what I'm talking about, Jonathan. They have no bearing on this. Johnson Creek does. But let's forget Johnson Creek Flood. There's 5,000 acres on the other side. Rocky Ford Ranch, my great-grandfather had the other 25. 5,000 acres. 2,500 of that acres goes to Henderson Ranch. It goes into Johnson Creek. A different way. That 2,500 acres of land, and there's more ranch land, but they're dry contributary. That one that's coming into that project, I can take you there and I invite every one of you. I'll take you horseback, I'll take you any way you want to go. Jonathan, you love riding horse. Let's go ride Johnson Creek. Don, I'll take you too. All of you. I'll take Tom, I'll take any of you. Let's go in the mule and I'll show you. But anyway, I mean, we've got to have a little humor here today because everybody's so serious. But we've got to look at this project and know that that dry contributary that's coming in, that's the one I'm talking about that's coming in there. It's serious. The reason why is because and I talked to Chris, the man, we had a wonderful conversation. He asked me, he goes, oh my, on the other project that is not going to be done yet, he goes, oh my, I didn't know water was. We may not be able to do project 2. But I'm telling you, gentlemen, that one that's coming from underneath Highway 27, once it channels there and it folds out, we got water problems. If you'll go right now, this morning, I just drove by, there's water standing there. Now, they're not finished. Edmund and Mark finished them. But the problem is, already, the field A and you have field B, if you're looking at it from the road. Field A, and Jonathan knows what I'm talking about. Field A had terraces in it. Now, does everybody here know what terraces? Don, you know what terraces are. Tom, do you know what everybody knows? Terraces are to deter and slow down the water, but also as a farmer or rancher, after 3 days, we drive around the hill country, we see ponds of water on all those fields that held that water. Eventually, we don't see it anymore. It went into the ground. But what has happened now, we have knocked all those terraces out of Field A. That's the problem down there. It has turned the water. It slowed the water down. In between Field A and Field B, the people that owned it before, since the 70s, had a natural channel that went down through there. It went right from Highway 27 to weed like this, and it went direct through that property. They took all the dirt off of it. Mr. Sandhill, the older father, put rocks in there, and we know what we're talking about, and put it in there, and they filled it up with dirt, that water cut it out again. He put it back, and finally got a standard coastal. So he had a coastal field of 200 feet between Field A and Field B. And we bailed that hay. We bailed that hay. He got a stand finally to hold that water. We know what the water does in the hill country. These rocks, once it fills up, believe me, I don't care if it's down there at yours, Jonathan, your grandfather's place, I know it's going to come to the water. And when we get a tropical storm, and I've only seen 30-something inches, but we know from Medina and Bandera in 87, 50-something, 45, 50 inches, we know what happened to Bandera. 5 inches in the town, washed away all those trail routes. We know what last year up at Junction, those poor people, when rocks springed up the watershed in Atlanta, they caught them down in Atlanta, washed them all away. I don't want that to happen. If y'all do the project, then that's fine. But I'm telling you, the problem is, if that dry contributor cuts across there and you come off Highway 20 to the main entrance, Ray Lynch told me it's a disaster. You can't get to those people. You can't go around by Hoodah Hollow because those dry contributors that are coming through my property and through other Henderson property that are coming and feeding right down to the corner. I mean, it's going to be 5 or 6 feet. What if that underneath it comes under Highway 27, it comes in Weezen, and it's funneling, it's 5 or 7 feet, just 5 or 7. Can a fire truck get through there? Those people are sitting on an island out there. You can't come around because Johnson Creek's already on the rise. You can't go around by Hoodah Hollow and get them. So, okay, we got the main entrance. The main entrance goes down, it goes to the field. We got this beautiful RV park there. Who's going to get them? We haven't got enough helicopters here. We ain't got enough helicopters in San Diego. If those people are sitting on their cars out there and it's only 3 foot, I don't want my grandmother, they're already gone. I don't want my mom down there. I mean, it's a disaster, gentlemen. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I think you were misinformed. I think maybe somebody didn't do their homework. I really don't know. But if you'll go visit with a big hay artery, what's going on down there? I get to call it down. What's going on down there? Don't they know that that floods down there? And we're talking about, Jonathan, people that you know, ranchers at Rock Spring and Mountain Home on 41 out there. They're going, what's going on down there? They've seen it only with their eyes from Highway 27. They haven't seen the visual that I have seen by living on Johnson Creek and I live up high. But there's a reason nobody built in that valley. There is a reason. There is no dams but 4 from the 9 miles from Ingram to Mountain Home. We can go ride a horseback if you want to again, and I'll show you. And they're little dams. They're little dams that just held water, and then when it flooded, it went over. People went across those crossings, went to their property on the other side. It is a problem. I hope you can fix it. I hope everything can go, but it doesn't look like you can fix it if we know that the water was down there in 32. And it's, what are we, 12 years away? 12 years away from the 100-year flood. Can we gamble? Can we gamble and we put it down there and we're okay? Everybody says, okay, it looks good. And one day we get 50 inches. Now, did we get 50 up here or did we get 45 over there by the Rocky Ford Ranch from I-10 and it comes this way? Do we get 50 inches up there at Mountain Home, all around by Hunt, and here it comes? The problem is, when Johnson Creek backs up, it backs up because they can't get in the wall up anymore. When the contributors are coming from this direction to it, they can't get in. It is going to be a mess. There's water standing down there right now on 1.5 inches of rain. Now, whether they're finished or not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out something has to be done. You cannot put those people down there. Chris told me that day. He said, Arbor, if it does flood, we think the houses are up high enough, it might flood the garages. Well, you can't go on might. You better know. Because we don't control the water. Mother Nature will control the water. That's the problem. We can talk about, oh, we think, and we think that this will be like this. No, we can't. Mother Nature will dictate to us when that water comes. And that will be when the hurricane hits at Corpus Christi and comes direct up there, and it sits for days and days, and it sits there and swirls around. That's when we'll know. That's it, gentlemen.
So let me
Just here to tell you, appreciate it.
So your concern is developing something that's gonna flood, not water drainage off the property or sewer. That was what you were talking about.
Yes, sir. I mean, there's other points, but we haven't got time.
Okay, but there's a.
I mean, that's another time.
So what Charlie looks at is the floodplain administrator is building inside, making sure people are not building or doing any kind of construction within the floodplain. So if it's, and so that's our regulation. You
Right.
can't build within the floodplain.
Yes, sir.
So if it's out of the floodplain, you just mentioned Ken Stoppel Ford, and I live east end of the county, and in 2002, we got 40 inches of rain in 6 days. And,
Yes, sir.
hill country's gonna flood.
Yes, sir.
So we have to stay out of the floodplain. You mentioned Ken Stoppel Ford, well, Ken Stoppel Ford could flood again.
Sure.
But do we not want to develop where Ken Stoppel Ford is? I don't think we want to not develop in that area.
It's not in the floodplain.
That's my point.
But that
okay?
area's been flooded.
But it got flooded. It got flooded.
A lot of places.
Well, we're talking about the 100-year flood.
Well, and
I mean, it has plenty of sense.
100-year flood means 1%. Doesn't mean every 100 years. It really means a 1% probability you're not going to exceed that. Okay? That's what 100-year means. Okay? So anyway, just to get your point, is be careful, don't build where people are going to get flooded and bad things.
I mean, you can't, and I don't know if I'm over or not, I'm just gonna say, you cannot have FEMA or anybody draw a line. FEMA wasn't here in 1932. They don't know, but you can't draw a line around the project and say, whoa, Johnson Creek, please don't come. Hey, from the north, say, whoa, we'll go around us. It's gonna go. It's gonna go wherever it wants to. That's the problem. I mean, there's other problems there, but we don't have time to talk about it. And I'm sure there's other people gonna hit on septic, water table, all that other. But gentlemen, it's gonna happen. We're in a low area. There's a reason why Mr. Sandell, when he built this new house there, when he came from Midland, why did he say, honey, why did we build down there where we can walk right out and drink coffee and see Johnson Creek? There is a reason all those new homes that are around there didn't build down by Johnson Creek. Johnson Creek will dictate to you. Guadalupe is a beast. It is a beast. You know that, Robert, from you living here.
It's the most dangerous river in the country.
It is. I'm telling you, but Johnson Creek, gentlemen, is unforgiving. It will sneak up you in the middle of the night and it will get you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Okay,
Let me just see which one and who's gonna.
okay. The next, I'm gonna start calling names. Conrad Wirt, Stu Walker, Glenn Gilly, Nick Dornack, Ricardo Solis,
Let me see.
yeah, that was pretty much just floodplain
Yeah,
issues,
right, precisely.
which we have no control
That's the
over.
whole, that's it. It's defined. We can redo it. It costs, we looked at redoing down in east part of the county, it was like $1 million, to have some specific areas redefined. I remember when I was a kid in New Brunswick, the Coal Mile River
Yeah,
came up 30 feet
yep.
one evening. 30 feet. Next day it was down.
I had a guy that I was in the Army with from Comal County,
Uh-huh.
lost both of his parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
and it came up just within hours.
The old Camp Warnicky down there, it came all the way up into the pavilion.
No, that's what
Did you say my name?
Nope.
Anybody new to you?
Not that I'm aware of. Yes, sir.
Number 6 on the list, Conrad Ward.
Mr. Word.
Howdy, good to see you folks. How are you? My name is Conrad Work, Precinct 1, 814 Lee Street. And let me first say thank you for your service, and I wanted to share concerns regarding budgetary elements that are on the platform, I think all the way to mid-August. As I've been tuning in and getting more involved with understanding the politics of Kerr County, and my representative, Mr. Ballou, if you recall some of the occurrences that happened in the past on his private radio station, there were some concerning things that were shared publicly. And as a constituent, I had quite a few questions about that. I asserted myself as a constituent and made the call, and we were able to sit down for a cup of coffee, and we had a lovely conversation. And where I'm going with this is I'm encouraging those that are tuning in online and tuning upstairs that we have to play a greater role as constituents for our county commissioners. One thing that I was very surprised in learning is the salary that's allotted to commissioners, $62,000 if I'm not mistaken when I checked online. And it's very interesting when we say $62,000 is a part-time salary. I'm a school teacher by training. So many times they allot county commissioners to a part-time position. Well, I did a little digging as a concerned constituent, and I see that either many of you are employed or have side businesses, and $62,000 is well above the bar of school teachers here in the state of Texas. And it became very concerning that $62,000 is what's allotted to county commissioners as a part-time salary. The next point that I hope our constituents in this Kerr County area understand is that we are facing a very significant budget deficit. We have expenditures in the jail.
Mr. Ward?
Yes, sir.
This part of the agenda, we're dealing with the mobile home park issue.
Very good. I put down there in the line, Judge Kelly, that this was just public comment, so I apologize if they called me in different sections.
That's what we called for at the first of the meeting, remember?
For whatever reason, they didn't call us down, so I apologize for that. May I finish my statement?
Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you for yielding that time. I'm simply encouraging us as residents to hold our Commissioners Court more accountable. If you're earning $62,000 for a part-time position, then I would hope that you're giving full-time effort, not part-time effort. That's my biggest concern. We're paying you gentlemen for a full-time salary, yet we're only getting part-time effort by your time. Peace to you and all the best. Thank you, Judge Keller.
If you could come back at 2 o'clock, we have a
I'll
budget
check with my
workshop.
family. I'll check with my wife.
Okay, that'd be the time to have your comments and have
Very
it
good.
effect.
My question is, I don't know where you got that, it's a part-time job.
Yeah.
Please share more. Please share more. Well,
We'll talk
I
about it at 2
guarantee you.
o'clock.
It's not a part-time job for me.
very good.
You're making an assertion, and you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
What did you base that on?
our conversation that you and I had, your full-time job as a radio announcer in the area that seems to be very biased and doesn't always speak to the constituents of Kerr County. And I think it's our responsibility, as Mr. Letts likes to laugh at this comment, I think it's our responsibility to hold our commissioners accountable, sir. Sincerely.
So that conversation I had with you that day, Conrad,
Yes.
was part of the thing that I do all the time with people all over the county. People like you, who I take the time, that's part of the job, to meet with, talk with, to find out what their concerns are, see if there's a problem in their neighborhood, get the pothole filled, get the tree cut down so you can see the stop sign. All of those things every day, all day long with people just like you. And that's what I was doing when I was talking to you.
Just to remind you, you were an hour late. You were an hour late, if you don't recall, and I had to call the court's office to say, where is Mr. Ballou? He was an hour late.
Things ahead of you.
Well, it would have been important to have that call to a constituent. I would challenge you though, sir, I'm not sure if that's worth $62,000 of an annual salary when we're facing a very significant budget due to circumstances beyond our control, but that does play a very important role in our area.
You decided.
Hardly done there.
Take care, sir. Peace to
Thank you.
Okay.
Who do we have next?
We have Melanie Ellsworth and Patrick Quinn, who is here, and Claudette Beard and Shelley Lawson are giving Melanie their time.
So how many are giving time?
Well, before we get to Melanie, what about these other people that I called?
Well, Pat Quinn was the very first on the list, and because he's giving me his minutes, they called him down, and I'm tied to Pat, so they said, well, Pat's giving me his minutes, just come down, since he was number 1 on the list.
So you want to go now?
Well, I mean, I can go back up. I've been up twice. I mean, you want me to get some exercise?
State your name,
Melanie Ellsworth,
address.
230 Dowling Road.
Okay.
I probably won't take all 12 minutes. Really, I could probably do it in 3 to 6. But I'm gonna try. I'm a fast talker, so I'll try to get it out. Basically, real quick, I'm a retired school teacher. I was a science teacher, and one thing we learn in 5th grade science is there's changes to the environment that happens when something goes in, and there's negative impacts and positive, but basically there's man-made changes and environmental changes. We're talking about, just to cut to the chase, a man-made change to an environment that might have an impact. Okay, just get it there. I'm not even going to argue or talk about the variance. We're just going to assume 0. Because I think Judge Kelly
That's
thinks
the law.
that's fair.
That's
and
the
that's
law.
the law. And
Yeah.
that's, so I'm not mad about any of that. That's not any issue. What I want to talk about is let's just assume and hold them to 0%. Do you feel like that's legit? Okay, so we want 0% change. Okay,
And this is stormwater drainage runoff, right?
yes.
Okay.
Stormwater drainage drain off, 0%.
Right.
Good there, everybody's good? Okay, let me give you a picture real quick. Can you pass that to them? Or do you want me to walk over here? So we had a 1.5 inch rain on Saturday. And I put my boots on, I walked up, I crossed the creek and walked all the way up on Glenna Haven's property. And I've got 136 pictures and a bunch of videos, but I just tried to sum it down on one page for you. And basically, you can see that as it started, it was, all this brown water coming in. And I walked the whole, I think you'll see a video today. But anyway, I walked and followed the path. And in science, when we wanted to follow the flow of water, you can put a drop of food coloring in to see where the flow goes. And luckily, we didn't have food coloring, but we had this sand and silt. And obviously, they're in pre-construction, so it's not. I mean, they're not finished. So we've got a lot of dirt, and it all washed down. And that happens because eventually it's going to be a development with streets and grass, and that won't be, the dirt won't be coming down, obviously. But what was nice about having the dirt is it showed the flow. We can really deduct that the water from here came here. Would you agree? I mean, it makes sense. Scientifically, there's evidence saying this water that was up here got in the creek because that's the same color that was up here that ended up in the creek. And so we want one, yes.
Quick question. Can you give me the references? I take it so I know what.
Okay, let me just tell you, yeah, let's say, so this is my property, I'm standing on my property, and there's kind of an island on my property so you can get out on it, and the water comes 2 channels.
And your property is below.
I'm right across, kind of
Across the
below
creek.
and across.
Well, can you tell us which direction you're looking here? Are you looking-
Yeah, this one I'm standing, the top left, I'm standing.
I'm saying east, west, what do you, just give everybody some
Gosh,
perspective.
I'm terrible about that, but sunsets in the
You're the
west.
science teacher.
Okay, you're right, east to west. I'm standing, sunsetting
You're
there.
kind of looking north.
I'm looking north.
You're across.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
looking north.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking north. The water is
Yeah.
in the development right up here. It's coming down. And you can see real clearly the creek was this color and now it's this color. Okay?
Okay.
Then now this second picture in the middle, I'm standing in the middle of the creek. And the development's up on the right. My house is up on the left. We've got the left flow is blue, the right flow's brown.
Okay.
The top right corner, I went up to Glenna Haven's property and I followed the flow and we had a breach in the construction fence. Okay, I got to another breach under that. There's a second breach in the construction fence. They used to have a pasture of goats right there at Penn. It was about this much underwater. The goats weren't there. Got to that breach, looked up, and that's the lake on the left. These two are the lake where the homes would be. That's where they're going to build them. And
The silt fence is holding that water back?
this fence is holding the water back. And then this bottom one is at the end, kind of at the end of the whole rain, the whole thing is muddy.
Is
Okay.
that Johnson Creek or was that?
This is Johnson Creek. It's usually blue, but it was completely brown. So I should have labeled those, sorry, I threw them on there. But do you get the kind of, I walked up the hill, found where all of this is coming from. And so I realized this is during construction, so can't hold you, but we just talked about 0% change. And you said 0% change would happen. This is what happened, and I think it needs to be fixed. I mean, I wouldn't want to build a home on this.
This is still under construction, though.
It is still under construction, but, I mean, how are you gonna build in a lake? It's still under
Well,
construction.
Right, the point is that at completion, there's no change. Now, what happens in the interim?
Right, exactly,
Nobody can
perfect.
control that, and exactly what Mr. Henderson said a little while ago.
Okay.
You're gonna have some flooding, and everybody knows that about Johnson Creek.
Exactly. So right now, the plan is as in place. This is what the plan's looking like. They're putting the plan into place. We got a problem. So do they need to change the plan? I mean, last week we talked about it and you said, obviously, we need to put in some retention ponds or something. So that's what I'm here to say is, what's,
It's
Are we gonna change-
mitigation, isn't that really the issue, Charlie?
The plans need to change.
okay,
Okay.
Okay,
But
you're
if there's retention, then that'll change the 0.
Correct.
Then you're retaining water, and that changes everything, and we cannot do that. We cannot
no,
require.
say that again? What did you just say?
We can.
Require
Can make it
zero.
less.
We can require 0.
Have required zero.
Yes.
We
Okay.
cannot require less
Law
than 0.
requires
No, I said
we
it
can't-
would be with retention.
Yes.
But we can put in
with
retention ponds.
It would be less than 0.
We're wasting time arguing if we're gonna require more, because we're not gonna require, we want 0. So let's just say 0. Charlie, does the plan need to change to get to 0?
Plans need to change to say zero.
Okay, that's what I want. I
Yep.
want the plans to change. So if it's, I came from Houston, when a house goes in or a subdivision goes in, you put a retention pond. When you have houses and concrete go in an area, you're gonna have more runoff because it's not the same. So to get to 0, we've gotta have a retention pond, we've gotta do something. And what we see that's happened now, and I appreciate Jason saying, we depend on you to be our eyes and ears. He just said that. Here I am. I'm your eyes and ears on what's going on the ground. The plan is not working as is. Charlie said we need to change the plan. I really appreciate that. That's what I'm here for. Let's change the plan, do it right. I'm here to kind of wave my hands and say, it's not working. What we've got, let's make a change. And let's do it right. And, stick to the law, but do it right. And where we don't have more than 0%, right? Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next one that's close would be speaking on his own, Glenn Gilly.
Okay, got him?
You're gonna introduce yourself and after Glenn.
Glenn, you can take your mask off if you want to speak.
Glenn Gilly, 172 Dowling. So, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us today. This isn't about trailer parks. There are multiple parks up and down Johnson Creek. The concern is about drainage, public health, and water quality. Something that the court has agreed with in the past, but has forgotten in this situation. On February 10th, 2003, Commissioner Lett said, subdivisions will require that very strict standards be met regarding runoff. I can assure the public that we will do everything we can within our rules to protect other property owners in the area. Judge Kelly brought this up in the September 23rd, 2019 variance hearing. Well, and so the public understands, the Texas Water Code says you can't divert water. You can't go and make improvements and start dumping more water on your neighbor. There's been a lot of lawsuits in this state over doing that precise thing. Commissioner Lett's assurances doesn't seem to be applying here, and Judge Kelly's warning is being ignored. Other properties are being flooded from diverted drainage runoff. This brings us to flooding. We all know the Hill Country is an unpredictable area when it comes to flooding. Unfortunately, the FEMA floodplain maps do not show this unpredictability. Why is this development being allowed to build so close to the FEMA floodplain when we all know the inaccuracies? There are plots for home sites at the southern end of the property, only a few hundred feet from Johnson Creek.
There are multiple septic systems along that boundary as well. What happens when that entire area is underwater? On May 29, 2007, Commissioner Ayler said, well, it's a good thing that all three forks didn't come down like Johnson Creek and like Dry Branch did. Because if they had, the country would have been pretty well damaged, I think. There were areas up there that had as much as 9 inches in about a 5-hour period. And I've heard one report of 15 inches in one area. Close to where I live, there were some people that lost a lot of fence and covered up the highway with boulders and trees. And all the way down 479. It was almost level across. I'm assuming he means the river. It's not as big as it's been, but it was pretty big for a short time. Commissioner Letts addressed the FEMA issue on January 23rd, 2017. The bottom line is if a true 100-year floodplain hits North Fork, South Fork, Johnson Creek, and Third Creek, it's all irrelevant anyway. It's all going to flood. Because the models say that doesn't happen, it doesn't say that it shouldn't happen, but it could happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. Thunderstorms are very, very variable. So we have to do floodplain models. We have to follow them. But at the same time, from a true flooding standpoint, they're not real value in my mind. They give you an idea under a certain criteria. This brings us to why. Government survive on taxes. We all know this. Tax revenue increases when raw land is developed. Commissioner Moser said on March 25th, 2019. Second thing, there's a couple of people that are looking at developing small divisions. And they're only interested in that because the sewer system is live now. I got a call this week from one person that has 40 acres near Verde Creek. And that he bought that property with that intention, not knowing the sewer system was coming in. So he's probably going to do something on that. That's all good from a county perspective. So from development and revenue and ad valorem taxes and use of the system. So that's it. However, is it worth it? Is it worth the risk of putting 20,000 gallons of sewage per day in leach line septic tanks a few hundred feet from a live creek? Is it worth the risk of dropping the water table? Is it worth the risk of lives being lost in a flood? As Commissioner Moser likes to say, if it doesn't pass the look right criteria, something is wrong. This doesn't look right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gilly.
Thank you.
Who do we have next?
Next one I have is Nick Dornack, and Miss Linda Peacock is donating her minutes to him.
Okay. Mr. Dornack,
Good morning.
state your name and address.
Nick Dornack, 100 Water Park Road, Waverly, Texas.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. I just want to mention that I've been retained to provide some opinion on this from a scientific perspective. I work at the Meadows Center at Texas State University, but I'm an independent consultant in this case, so my views do not necessarily represent Texas State or the Meadows Center.
So what's your expertise?
Well, I grew up on
Professionally.
Yes, well, it goes to that. I grew up on a ranch down in South Texas, and water was always a very key part of that. Went to Texas A&M University to receive a degree in ag development and a master's degree at the University of Wyoming in rangeland ecology and watershed management. And for the last 20 years, I've been working on water quality issues, water resource issues, and educating stakeholders on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So I wanted to just mention that the letter that I provided for Mr. Gordon is in your red envelope here. I'm not going to read the letter, but I just wanted to.
Well, give us a summary because we haven't even had time to read it. It
Okay.
just showed up today.
Well, the letter, the summary of the letter basically looks at potential impacts from a water quality perspective and from a stormwater management perspective of this development. I reviewed numerous documents, including the development plan, pointed out some concerns with regard to the proximity to the creek, the addition of impervious cover, and the potential pollutant impacts from that. So I speak a little bit about hungry water, and that's what happens when you have water that falls to the earth and there's not as many places for it to soak in and disperse anymore. So it has all this energy that it's looking to disperse. It becomes very hungry and will pick up pollutants, will pick up sediment, and deposit those at a much more rapid clip. You also have the septic systems here that, again, appear to be sized properly. The development, as has been clearly discussed today, is right outside the floodplain. But what we have is potential changes to the floodplain that can take place when you develop like this. So some of the things that we recommend, and I would recommend this as you're trying to get down to a 0% change on discharge. One of the things that we've been doing extensively, there's a ton of research out there with regard to stormwater retention. It would be the incorporation of green stormwater infrastructure, things like rainwater harvesting, pervious surfaces, like permeable pavers rather than pavement, things like that, that you don't have to take up real estate area and put in a giant retention pond. But if you disperse your infrastructure throughout the development, it can offset that and actually create more of a natural flow pattern as well. So you can help slowly recharge the groundwater, keep your base flows up in your creek, and avoid some of that flashy kind of behavior that we're talking about. What these kind of developments can cause to flash floods and enhance the effects of flooding.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Would that qualify as retention then?
It would be considered under stormwater retention. So the engineer would be able to incorporate those things throughout the development. We have a ton of resources that are available. I work on watershed protection plans, which are voluntary plans that communities engage with TCEQ to get funding to implement non-point source pollution protection practices like that. So we do this all over the state of Texas, particularly in the Hill Country. It's very important as we're in this Edwards Aquifer contributing zone. We've got these pristine Hill Country streams with low nutrients. When you add in these developments and impervious cover, you're going to be picking up a lot of those nutrients and changing the chemistry of the stream. It's going to change the quality of the stream. Also, during construction, having those stormwater controls is very important. As we heard demonstrated before, that water went from blue above the development to brown below when we had a storm during construction. The other thing I did want to mention and leave the door open to for your consideration, we're currently engaging with Hays County on developing some drainage criteria for with their floodplain administrator. Basically, counties are very limited to what they can do with developments, statutorily. Cities have a lot more enforcement power. Even in their ETJs, you can introduce ordinances for water quality. So we actually just have ordinances passed in Wimberley and Wood Creek, and we're now working with Hays County on their drainage criteria. But what it would do is look at watersheds over 64 acres. So if you've got a creek or a stream with a watershed of over 64 acres, it would require setbacks from that stream to provide additional buffer zones and protect the floodplain. So it's a way to kind of ease into development and just make sure that it's safe, protective of the environment, and protecting the people there as well. So trying to incentivize those kinds of things with developers is a great way for a county to do that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or work with you guys in the future on that. I think this development is an example that really should be learned from. Test out what you can do here and try to learn from it, and hopefully implement some measures, some incentives, some programs to ensure that we're doing things safely and developing safely that is going in a way that's going to be protective of people and the environment that they all come to live here for. So,
just maybe one comment, Judge, if I could. And I agree with a lot of what you said, Mr. Cornack. But this development, I believe, is not in the ETJ.
That's
so
right.
It's in the county.
That's
and
correct. Counties
have no authority to do the things that you were just mentioning that municipalities have to do.
Well, they do not have the ability to, let's say, require green stormwater infrastructure. So the developer, in your case, trying to meet their runoff requirements, can do retention, can do anything. I'm just saying that's one option that
Right.
a county could recommend to the developer to get there.
Sure.
So when you're having those conversations with engineers and developers, say, hey, you don't want to lose 5 homes to this retention pond. Have you thought about doing green
So
infrastructure?
that's how you control the flow. That retention ponds are what you're talking about.
Well-
It's being, there are multiple ways of doing it. right?
It's not, but it's not a pond.
I
It's
understand, I understand.
Yes,
That's just
sir.
another solution.
Yes,
or
another
partial
solution. Yes, and trying to mimic natural flow.
Do you have any, since you were hired by these people, do you have any issue with the sanitation engineers' work done on the facility, or did you look
On
at that?
the septic
Yeah.
issues? Well, again, I think with developments in general, it's important to note where they're being built and how they're being built. When you put septic systems like this, it appears that they meet the requirements and statutes that are out there from the state. But what you're doing is you're putting this potential risk factor right on the edge. You know, right in closer proximity to the stream, you know, about as close as you can. And so if things fail, or when things fail, which they almost always do.
Well, if they fail, then they got a problem. But if, my question is, sanitation engineer designed this to meet the requirements, do you have any issue with that?
I don't really have
Okay,
any concerns
Thank
on
you.
the septic at this point,
Okay, thanks.
from any data I've seen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good point.
Thank you. Who do we have next, Sheriff?
Okay, the next one to speak is Glenna Haven, and she has Ricardo Solis and Stu Waller donating their time to it.
Got them all.
Sorry.
We're not going to be able to show the video, but it's in the record.
Ms. Haven?
My name is Glenna Haven, and I reside at 189 Henderson Branch Road in Ingram, Texas.
You may proceed.
I mentioned to you last week that I've been a resident here, Kerr County, for 18 years. I'd like to just begin by responding to Commissioner Blue on your comments on your recent radio show when you said that neighbors are so opposed to this Meadowbrook development because it is manufactured homes, and that we were discriminating against that kind
I
of
didn't
house.
say all,
I'm sorry?
some.
Some. I want to respectfully respond that nothing could be further from the truth in my case.
I'm glad to hear that.
In fact, I'm a huge proponent of the development of more affordable housing in Kerr County. I totally believe we need more reasonably priced housing. But I'm going to use my time to talk about many of the problems that I have with the development plan there at Meadowbrook, and specifically on the storm drainage. As I told you last week, I've owned the property located at 100 Big Daddy Road that wraps around both the eastern and southern perimeters of the entire Phase 1 development. I've witnessed firsthand on multiple occasions the raging power of water from both runoff and Johnson Creek flooding on these properties during heavy rain. The lower section of Meadowbrook's Phase 1 development plan, where most of the 102 home sites are located, was previously a large crop field. It was the lowest area along this stretch of Johnson Creek floodplain and became a virtual lake where runoff would stand for days. The water, and I don't know that the engineers have considered is, the water didn't run off the property. It inadvertently served as its own retention pond in this giant field. Following the heavy storms we had in late May, with all the hail and all of that, the entire area was just standing water everywhere. And luckily, the developers were able to see that firsthand. Home sites cannot be situated where they're going to be standing surrounded by water. So since that time, I have watched every day, 8 hours a day, eaten the dust, heard the roar, as an unfathomable amount of fill has been brought in to build up this area so that these home sites won't be sitting in water, and rightfully so. But I'm witnessing other things happening, and that is that the developer is changing the grade on most of Phase 1. The problem is the development plan calls for no containment, And with the new grade, the water that used to sit, not run off, on those 30 acres of farmland now has no place to go but adjoining property. That is unacceptable. Section 11.086 of the Texas Water Code provides that no person may divert or impound the natural flow of surface waters in the state or permit a diversion or impounding of him to continue in a manner that damages the property of another by the overflow of water diverted or impounded. This past Friday, the 31st, we had a downpour of about, it amounted to 1.5 inches in my rain gauge, according to official records. As a matter of fact, I was outside on my back porch because my house is up high and overlooks the entire development, watching that storm, when all of a sudden I heard these loud explosion popping sounds and looked over to the development to see their transformers blowing. And I was witnessing all this happen. Well, with the power out, there was no reason to go back inside, so I stayed out on my porch and actually observed what happened. The change of grade and the diversion of runoff on the Meadowbrook development was dramatically obvious since the May 28th big rains we had. All of the water that had previously stood in that field was now flowing down to one corner of the property called a drainage field on their development plan. This yellow represents my property, and this gray area here on the development plan is where all of the water from all of this surrounding went. I have photos and videos which we introduced today into evidence, or for your consideration, to show the vast amount of runoff that was directed to that area and drained through my goat pen, my shelter, and across my property through an old pecan bottom for over 300 yards before it entered Johnson Creek. Now, it's not that far from that drainage field of Johnson Creek, but the way they diverted it, that's the way it flowed. It was not just a new runoff that had never been there before, but it was the amount of runoff from a 1.5 inch rain that was far greater than any runoff I've ever seen on the property. I want to explain as well that there was damage from this 1.5 inch rain runoff to my property, including bent steel fence posts where the water came rushing through the fence, actually bent my fence posts. The shed and goat pen had water standing up, I would say about 8 to 10 inches. Luckily, in the spring, I moved my goats to another pasture, put in a new cross fence, and they were not in the fence at the time. My road was damaged, and is visible new erosion all through this beautiful native pecan bottom that runs along the creek there, where the grass was all flattened, eaten away, and there is now dirt exposed. My concerns for the serious pollution issues that have been brought up, or for the flooding that Aubrey Henderson spoke to, or that Mr. Dornack just spoke to, these are concerns. Not just when it comes to Meadowbrook's development plan, but going forward. We all want to see our county grow and prosper. I just want new developments done responsibly. No plan can be rubber stamped. Serious environmental and safety issues for Kerr residents must be carefully studied and protected. Drainage controls are within the jurisdiction of this body. You have a moral and a legal responsibility to the citizens of this county to set and enforce drainage regulations for everyone. I am asking you to uphold the high standards that keep Kerr County and its natural resources the pristine jewel of Texas and the reason we've chosen it as our home. Failure to do so will lead to catastrophic damage to our waterways and to our property. Of even greater concern is that when a big flood does come, homes located in that Johnson Creek floodplain, such as the Meadowbrook retirement community, could suffer devastating damages and even possible loss of life. Please protect us.
So let me ask you a question if I may. So it sounds like what you're saying is the water leaving the Meadowbrook property
Yes, sir.
is leaving at a different location than it was
Yeah,
before?
in several new
Okay,
locations.
just item number one, you said that. And item number two is you said the amount of water leaving that has increased over what it used to be.
Yes, sir,
So
dramatically
just, I
increased.
just wanted to make sure I understood.
That is
your
correct.
2
That is my,
points.
that is my, and I do have considerable photo and video
Okay.
to
So those are
to
your-
show you.
Okay.
Yes, I stood out there in the with lightning striking everywhere because it was, I couldn't even, the picture says 1,000 words. And I could spend here,
Okay.
I could spend 30 minutes here and not be able to show you.
So those are your 2 main points, right there.
Those are my 2.
Leaving at a different location and the amount coming down has
Dramatically
increased.
increased.
Okay.
Without containment, and this was a 1.5 inch rain. I
Yes,
just can't fathom
correct.
anything greater.
Okay.
Thank you.
Judge, we take a short break.
I do show 2 more
Oh,
speakers is it. The next one is a Pedro Villarreal. He has public comment, but he advised me it is over 1.3 on your agenda.
Say what now?
On his written deal here, he said it's about public comment.
But it's
I asked
1.3?
him, and he said it is 1.3.
Okay, so
So Pedro Villarreal is next, and then the last one would be Mr. Roger Gordon. That's the last 2 I showed.
we need to take a break now?
Maybe before Mr. Gordon.
Believe me, he's Okay, so here's
Mr. Villarreal. Villarreal.
Villarreal. Introduce yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state
My
your
name
name
is
and
Pedro Villarreal. My wife Dora and I are retired senior citizens. I'm also a veteran. We've had our ranch for almost 25 years outside of Ingram on Highway 27, 324, Hootall Hollow Road. We have about a half a mile of Johnson Creek that borders our property. I'm here to voice my concern about another trailer park that practically sits almost on Johnson Creek. My concern is the septic system that will feed off those trailers, and if it was to malfunction or stop working, then dump all sewage into Johnson Creek. It will be disastrous for everyone involved. Not just for the citizens of Ingram, but also for the citizens of Kerrville and those cities downstream of the Guadalupe River where Johnson Creek feeds into. A few years back, Armadillo Trailer Park septic system malfunctioned and had to be shut down for a while until the septic system was brought up to standards. Luckily, the sewage didn't reach Johnson Creek because there was a buffer zone to keep it from reaching the creek. My wife and I are concerned with the air, the land, and the water. We strongly feel that our natural resources shouldn't be abused by anyone to make a buck. I voiced my concern to our commissioner, Precinct 4, Don Harrison. He said he was against it before he voted for it. I find that astounding. If he's really concerned about his constituents, why did he vote that way? The other concern is, why did the commissioners and county judge try to muffle the taxpayers' voices about this huge trailer park? What compelled you to hastily approve this project without taxpayer approval or input? Never in my 25 years here have I seen where the taxpayer's voice was left out by the previous commissioners. It astounds me to see this happening here, and we will remember what happens here at election time. I've seen Johnson Creek flood several hundred yards into the flatlands. I've even had to sleep 2 or 3 times on that side of the creek because I'm on the south side of Johnson Creek. And I've had to sleep on that side while my wife is still at the ranch by herself. And I don't see any justifications in adding another trailer park It's like saying, you know what, let's build a power plant right on Johnson Creek. Because the money is what counts. It's not the people, and it's not the safety of the environment. It's the money that counts. And it shouldn't be that way. I come from Galveston, Houston area. And I've seen what those plants have done to pollute the air. The children breathe it, the senior citizens breathe it, the veterans breathe it. Everybody breathes that. Now, you've seen what's happened to Michigan up there in their water system. Now, do we want Texas to start polluting our waterways also? I don't think so. It's going to be very costly for future generations because they ain't going to have anything to drink. So, my concern is that trailer park and anything that's industrial that they want to build on Johnson Creek. And I thank you for hearing me out.
One thing I might say is, I remember speaking with you and I told you, you're exactly right, I told you I wasn't for development down there, but our hands were tied. They were satisfied, they met state requirements and we couldn't stop it. We tried to stop it. It's property rights. We couldn't stop them from doing that. And no matter how I felt, and I felt much like you, but it's their property, and they satisfied the requirements they needed to go forward with it.
Well, there's 5 of you, and one thing I understand is when somebody tells me one thing and does something else, it tells me something else is happening besides that.
Mr. Villarreal, it's the law. We can't stop people from using their property if they use it legally. And when it comes to a development, we have requirements, and we will enforce those requirements rigidly. But we can't say you can't put a trailer park there.
But we elect you people, and it's up to you to say, you know what, I don't agree with it.
No, sir, it doesn't work that way.
Can't.
We get sued if we do that because we have taken those people's property rights away from them without compensation. We can't do that. It's against the law. We can get arrested for this stuff.
You mean we elect y'all, and when it's time to vote for your constituents, you can say, I have to go with it?
And we say we have to follow the law.
We have to follow the law, whatever it is.
Period. We got to follow the law.
It's like this, if we decided that we wanted to change the speed limit someplace, we can't do that. It's already set, it's a state law, it's done. We can vote all day long on it, it's not gonna change anything, that's all they're saying. How we voted or what our personal opinions are about something doesn't change what the law is, and we cannot go beyond that.
God knows we don't need any more trailer parks in Kerr County, but we can't stop them legally. That's the issue.
Well, then I guess we wasted our time coming up here and explaining our concerns to you guys.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think what we're trying to communicate to you is we can only have certain freedoms and limitations, and we have to abide by what the state law. The county government is just an arm of the state government. We can only do what we're allowed to do by statute. We can't do anything else. The judge said it perfectly. We can't keep somebody from using their property as long as they do it legally. And that's another beauty of the hill country. And it's another beauty of not being in the city, okay? Because it's not too restrictive. But there are restrictions on environment, in health, floodplain, and that kind of stuff. Those are the things we can enforce. And so this development has met the requirements as best we can tell, okay? They must meet the requirements of the state law.
We will assure you that they will meet the requirements.
Huh.
Now, when this whole thing started, there was an effort to try to enforce our old trailer park regulations. Let's call them trailer park regulations that were much more restrictive. And we got criticized, we got sued because what we did is put a variance in place to comply with state law, and they're complaining about we should have been restricting more water to not be allowed to drain off that property. Now, as of today, I think everybody's back on the same page as to what the law is, and that is 0 increase in the drainage. And that's what we're enforcing. That's what we're trying to enforce when we did the variance. It's what we're trying to enforce when we approve the development plan. It's what we're going to enforce when this is all over. There will be zero increase in the drainage off that property.
And trying to enforce that the sewer water from the septic system does not contaminate Johnson Creek.
That's what we're talking about. And
And
it's
that's
gonna happen.
Well, it's,
Well,
Every
they meant,
3 to 5 years, Johnson Creek floods,
Mr. Villarreal,
and it's gonna go over there to that trailer park.
Mr. Dornack spoke just before you did, okay? And we asked him about the septic, and he said it met the requirements. It meets the requirements. If it meets state's requirements, we can't do any more about it. That's what I'm telling you. We don't get to just go in and say, hey, we don't like it, so you got to get rid of it, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. We have to follow the law. That's the problem. We don't like it either.
Well, thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate you coming down. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, come back at 10 minutes till. Before we come back to order, I think we have one last speaker on this that has signed up. Is there anyone other than Mr. Gordon who signed up to speak? Okay, you may, Mr. Gordon, you may proceed.
Judge Kelly, thank you. Members of the court, I'm going to ask for a little bit more than 3 minutes. Mr. Sorensen gave a great presentation, touched on a lot of issues. I'd just like the opportunity to respond.
No.
Can't imagine I'll take
No,
much
sir,
longer.
we're not doing that.
We're here today not to try and stop this development from taking place. We're here today to ask the court to strike a balance between the interests of the property developer and the interests of the public. A good outcome today is one in which both sides leave a little bit unhappy. The developer is unhappy because he's got to spend a little bit more money to improve his development. Neighboring property owners are a little bit unhappy because it still gets to move forward. But the public as a whole is treated fairly. Now, I heard this court multiple times talk about following the law, following the law, following the law. I'd ask you to each open up your red binder, little folder I got there in front of you. On the left side of that's a copy of the court order issued by Judge Patillo.
Which is being challenged, by the way.
Okay, great. Hasn't happened yet, as far as I know.
Well, it's in the works.
Okay, well, it hasn't happened yet. And what's important on this court order, the highlighted part, is when Judge Patillo ordered the county to void the variance and any permits that were granted in whole or in part on that variance.
There are none granted on that variance.
Well, the law that you guys have in place right now, even if it's something that you think you need to change, even if it's something that y'all think that current state regulations don't allow, the variance that y'all granted turned into the development permit that happened in February.
No, it didn't.
Mr. Hastings.
No, it didn't.
Mr. Hastings has just said that the development permit needs to be redrawn.
It does.
And that's because it doesn't comply with your regulations, even ignoring the variance.
It doesn't comply with... Okay, go ahead.
I'm not trying to engage in an argument. I really am not. I'm trying to present our position on this. And Mr. Hastings has acknowledged that it doesn't comply with your regulations because it doesn't. The drainage that this property is supposed to put off the property is more than y'all granted, even ignoring the variance using your own subdivision regulations. Part of the reason I think that is because what they're doing on the property is not consistent with what they said they're going to do. Nowhere in the drainage plan that was submitted to the county do they talk about changing the grade on the property. All the calculations which were done and submitted and purportedly reviewed by this office were based on the grade of the property as it existed before the development occurred. Why is it that the changing of the grade that's taking place, the changing of the entire process is not being reviewed by the county? That is a significant departure from your own rules and regulations, from the law. Why is it that the subdivision of this property, which occurred in March of this year, was not approved by the court, but was relied upon by the county in granting these septic permits? Every other subdivision that occurs in the county has to go through this office, has to be approved by the members of this court. That was ignored as well. There is a balance that can be found. You guys have the opportunity to enforce your regulations. I would ask, I would plead, to please take a second look at this development. Please strike that balance and do something that the entire county can be proud of.
Just make one comment. This is not a subdivision. It doesn't come under our subdivision rules and regulations.
Which part?
The mobile home park.
This
Well,
development.
I've got a document in this red book filed in March of this year where he subdivides this property into 4 different parcels. It looks like a subdivision, it says subdivide, it smells like a subdivision. The county relied upon it in granting 4 separate septic permits to each of these 4 parcels. I would argue that's a subdivision. And, you know, it's the relaxation of the rules. It's the perception that certain people have to follow the rules and other people get that rubber stamp. And I don't think there's anybody up here who's doing this on purpose. I don't think Charlie's doing this on purpose. I think that in September, when the variance was presented, we didn't hear anything about that provision that Mr. Sorensen talked about. February, when the development plan was approved, nobody talked about that. 10 days ago during the court hearing, nobody talked about it. But it may be what y'all need to do. It may be that y'all need to change your regulations. I'm talking about the regulations that are in place. And the fact is the developer is not complying with those regulations, and nobody seems to care. People are ordered by the court to prevent these permits from taking place. Mr. Hastings just said the plan needs to be changed. The plan needs to be changed because it's not in compliance with the law. Yet every day last week, development continued. Called Mr. Sorensen. Our responsibility. Development continues. I sent a copy of the order to Mr. Mundahl. Development continues. You don't have to choose between one or the other here. Y'all have the ability to impose reasonable drainage requirements that would help improve the water quality that I know is so important to this community. I understand that. And I have advised my clients on what y'all can and can't do. I recognize you can't prevent a manufactured home park from going in, but you don't have to rubber stamp. You don't have to look the other way if that development doesn't comply with your own regulations.
What's been rubber stamped, in your opinion?
How's the drainage? How did that drainage plan that exceeded the variance that was granted, that exceeded the own subdivision regulation, get approved?
I think it was a mistake.
It may be a mistake. Work continued all last week.
Is that a rubber stamp? That is a mistake? And what needs to be corrected?
Sure. The second, I answer your question, the second rubber stamp is the subdivision that occurred in March of this year.
I don't know about that.
You don't remember it because you all never saw it.
I said, I know nothing about that.
Correct, because y'all never saw it. And in the absence of that subdivision approval, those septic permits could never have been issued.
I beg to differ with you on that, because I think what we're talking about is the difference between the generic meaning of the word subdivision versus what we're talking about in terms of subdivisions, real estate subdivisions. That's one tract of property up there. I don't know what he's done to cut it up, but it's a mobile home. The whole thing is under the manufactured housing rental community regulations.
And it was when y'all approved it in February, but 1 month later, he went and subdivided and chopped it up into 4 parcels and used that chopping to get the numbers of gallons per day that allow the county to regulate the septic system instead of TCEQ. In the absence of that subdivision, he's going to TCEQ to get a septic permit, not the county. And y'all may not know about this because it never came up. That's why I put a copy of this in that red folder. It's on the right side. It's only the 3 documents in here.
Well, just like last week, we're going to look into it and see what's going on.
And I appreciate that, Judge. You know, again, we're back in front of the court tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
I'll see you there.
Well, we're going to be on Zoom.
I'll see you there.
See you there. We're not here to pick a fight. Judge, you talked about your permanent injunction that you've got against a neighbor for pushing water onto your property. And I imagine that's the exact same provision that you heard Glenna Haven talk about. And of course, that is our next option. We believe, though, that if y'all, the Commissioner's Court, through your agents in the engineering office and the attorney's office, do what you've been talking about all day today and follow the law, then you'll tell those folks out there to stop until they submit a plan that complies with your regulations, until they submit a plan that's been properly subdivided according to your own regulations. That may take a week. Y'all may knock that out next week with no issue whatsoever. I don't believe that y'all have to make a decision with one side or the other. You know, if you do exactly what you've been talking about all day today and follow the law, then somebody should go out there today and tell them they need to stop development until they get their revised plan approved. That brings the drainage down to what y'all say is the requirement. Until they get their subdivision that occurred in March approved, which was relied upon to get the 4 septic field permits issued by this county. It may be that y'all ultimately do all that, but it hasn't happened yet. And I'm just asking y'all, I said the same thing last week, measure twice and cut once. Mistakes happen. I recognize that. Again, I don't think there's anything nefarious here. But y'all have an opportunity, recognizing that that mistake did take place, to do the right thing. Measure twice, cut once. I'd ask y'all to please do that.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, can I ask the county attorney a couple of questions?
Sure.
I have one other issue. There's a flash drive that I submitted to the clerk into the record, which contains 100+ photos, including drone photos, and a 6-minute video. I would urge, respectfully, that each of you take 6 minutes out of your day today and watch that video.
Okay.
That video will help you understand what it is that the neighbors are seeing and help you understand the opportunity that exists.
We take judicial notice of the
For y'all to
exhibits and
mitigate
we're reviewing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, they're really more for, they're general questions for the county attorney, or either one, I guess.
Jason looked up some.
I guess the questions I have is, and it's going back to a lot of the comments, I want to make it clear as to what authority the court has. One person mentioned that there were violations of the Texas Water Code.
Right.
Does this court have jurisdiction over that, over the water code?
Without getting into what we would talk about in executive,
Right.
that's not something that would come before this court.
Okay. Do we have the authority to change, we have, well, under our floodplain retention order, prevention order, we are required to follow FEMA's rules and guidelines and maps. Is that correct? We have no authority to change their maps without their approval.
Well, we can ask for them to redo the flood map, but that's a process.
But it exists.
It does.
It's a process, but we don't have authority to unilaterally make a change to the FEMA map.
Correct, correct.
And if our rules, which pretty much mirror state law for the most part, and where we have some errors, it looks like state law trumps our rules. But if someone, a developer, submits planning material from licensed people that follow those rules, do we have any discretion on approving those?
Correct. The county engineer can only approve or reject. He doesn't have the authority to alter.
In this court, if someone's administratively complete, we have to approve, we have no authority.
Well, and I can't remember if I hit on this or not. Charlie's been bringing those to y'all as a courtesy to let you know what's going on in the precincts and for the public to know what's going on in the county. Statutorily, y'all are not involved in the approval or disapproval of these development plans.
He is the authorized designated representative of the county.
By the statute and our.
As the county engineer.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he comes to us as a
I'm trying to
courtesy.
make sure that, so the public understood what authority we have, which is not a lot, and a lot of the things that were talked about, and like, Mr. Henderson, Aubrey Henderson made some comment. I agree with a lot of what Aubrey Henderson said. That's why I can talk, because he and I have talked a lot.
Sure.
I think that if we get a 1932 or a 57 flood, we get 56 flood again, there's going to be a lot of problems in this county, but we have no authority on this court to do that, to change.
And don't forget, it doesn't say that we're not going to have a flood that will do everything everybody said. There's a 1% probability, okay, we won't, okay? I mean, there's 1% probability it will. 1 chance in 100, it's going to happen. Ken Stubble Ford is going to flood. 1%. Doesn't say 0. It said there's a probability.
But the issue is, we have no authority to change that.
Right.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
That's the issue, is that
Charlie?
we have to follow the flood prevention order.
That's why we're sympathetic, but our hands are tied.
Was the 2002 flood a 500-year flood? I know it was at least a 100-year
The
flood.
2002 flood, and it depended on where you were.
Where you were.
Right.
If you were on Third Creek,
Mhm.
it was bigger than a 1,000-year event.
Right.
Wow.
If you were on Town Creek, it was a 100-year event on the dock.
Right.
And
Okay.
if you were up in Hunt, I don't know what they got up there. I don't think they got
Quarter
the storm.
million.
The storm was focused over here,
Right.
kind of north of I-10 and 16.
Oh, I drove to Bandera to watch the Medina River flow over 173.
Right.
That's how big it was over there.
But I believe that the storms that Mr. Henderson was referring to were much bigger than a 100-year event. The floodplain maps and what we require only goes up to what is called a 100-year event. That's what it's been called throughout the years. It's really a 1% chance that it will be equaled or exceeded on any given day.
Right.
Right.
That we can get that same storm. You can have 2 of those storms back to back.
In the same year. Right. Right.
Well, let's talk about what we have right now. The current project, as it stands, would likely, from if what I'm hearing is correct, would be underwater right now. Is that correct?
Charlie, why don't you get up there?
I'm sorry, the question is, phase one would be underwater and 100-year event right now?
We did
No.
an executive session.
Right now, after an inch and a half of rain is what I heard, that every place where they're gonna build is already underwater right now. Did I not hear that correctly?
I heard that too.
Okay.
I heard that it was a crop field and that there were some type of berms at the bottom that would cause it to retain water. And my understanding is
Terraces.
that maybe those terraces, he said they've been knocked down.
Okay.
I don't
Filled
have
in.
the historical knowledge that he has.
I'm not talking about history, I'm talking
Sure.
about right now. So right
Yes, sir.
now, what we got with an inch and a half of rain the other day would put this current project underwater. That's what I thought I heard from several of the people that
I think I heard the same. I think I heard that the silt fences that are around there that are trying to protect all the
What I-
runoff
what I wanna
that also
establish is-
had an effect on that.
You bet.
Is the water that's standing or was standing below where they're gonna build or where they're gonna build?
Where they
It's where they're building.
Okay, so that would need, now, you'd be foolish to build there now, but we can't tell them they can't build there now.
No, but it was held because of the silt fencing,
Yeah.
which was doing its job to stop it. It's not you have to look at it
I
after.
understand that, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about how much, that's an inch and a half of rain. Am I gonna continue, if I was in the middle of a project right now, and it's underwater and I have to wait to do any more dirt work or anything until the water recedes, I'm gonna probably rethink my program.
But it has
Unless
a temporary dam.
It's under construction.
I get that. Are you not understanding what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, but if I build a house
Yeah.
and I dig out for the foundation and it rains, the water fills up to it,
You
that
wait.
means I'm not gonna build the house, it means
No,
I haven't
I
finished
get that.
construction.
But this is not something with a foundation.
Same thing. They're building.
These are houses that are above the ground. So I'm just trying to establish whether or not the developer, whether it's prudent to build there in the same spot or to move it up the hill a little bit.
That's up to his design engineer.
Right.
It really is.
As far as the county is concerned, then,
Yes, sir.
whether he builds in the water is not up to us.
Our hands are tied.
That's his purview.
Okay.
There's three things.
Well, let me finish, Tom.
Okay.
But changing the amount of runoff has apparently already happened from what we heard today. Or the direction, rather, of where the water's running.
It's, when a project is not complete.
Yeah.
I know, I get that.
It's in the middle of construction. I know that
So
was also stated.
where is he at with this? Does anybody here know where we're at with it?
I've
Is it
heard
just
about
dirt being moved?
50%.
We need to probably go to executive session, is what I think.
Yeah, okay. All right.
There's
Well-
three things. The floodplain that Charlie's talking about,
Right.
they're outside the floodplain. So they can build. The temporary silt fence has probably caused some flooding exacerbation. Okay. Okay.
Change flow.
Number two is, what I heard is more water's coming off of that area, okay, than was before, okay? And it's coming off at a different location. Now, both of those things are not good.
And if I could for just a second, on paper, we can say 0% all day, but can you guys hold them to fixing that? And that's kind of what.
Yes, but they have to complete the project.
Right.
But-
We're in the middle of something here.
Yeah, but so far, it doesn't look good, so.
Well, their plan should show that it doesn't exceed the amount of water coming off, or it doesn't change the location it comes off. Their plan should show that,
And they don't. Their plans show an increase in water.
okay?
So until it's completed, though,
Yeah,
and what Commissioner Letts was talking about, you're in the middle of the project,
exactly. But,
and that water's gonna flow a different direction until it's completed, and so you can't give the final.
right, but at the end of the day, when it's completed, if I go out there and have another, river the same, I
And you have
trust
a
Charlie,
civil lawsuit.
don't do that to me. I don't want a civil lawsuit.
There's no
Do-
other.
But do your job to hold them to it, so I don't
We
have
have
to do
to
a
hold the
civil one.
engineers accountable.
Well,
Right.
so have you all conducted an inspection of the property, which is fully within your power?
I think
It's
we need to
written
go
in your
to-
regulations.
I think we need to go
I
to-
suspect that if you do an inspection of the property, you'll see that what they were doing on the ground is different from the plans that this board approved. That is a big deal. That is significant, and y'all should be concerned about that. If what they're doing on the ground is exactly what they said they do, then by golly, we lose, we take our ball, we go home.
We're good.
But they are changing the grade of that property in a way that is wholly inconsistent with what they told Charlie they were gonna do.
So it's
Charlie
in-
just acknowledged it.
So it's inconsistent with a drawn plan?
That's right.
Yes.
I don't think Charlie was acknowledged.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Excuse me, Charlie did say the plan needed to be changed.
Okay.
I think we need to go into executive session if we're gonna discuss
And
about
we'll-
this.
Let's come to order. Mr. Lance, you may proceed.
I think we need to go into executive session.
Okay.
I mean, this is.
We've got one more item on the
Motion.
agenda. We've got some bills to pay. We've got a few other things we need to do before we go into executive session. Is there anything, any more that you want to talk about on this topic? Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is 1.4. I know Ms. Lands is waiting outside patiently. Thank you for your patience. This is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to rescind court order number 38171 in order to reset a public hearing for August 17, 2020 at 10 a.m. to be held in the Commissioner's Courtroom, Kerr County Courthouse, 700 Main Street, Kerrville, Texas, for the purpose of presenting the Kerr County District Court Records and Archive Plan for fiscal year 2020-2021. Ms. Lands.
I just needed to change the date. I had incorrectly put the wrong date on the other court order, so I'm just requesting that order be rescinded with the new date.
I move for approval, reset the date as submitted in this item.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Baloo, to approve the new date for considering the Kerr County District Court Records and Archive Plan in the public meeting. Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Lance.
Thank you.
Approval agenda. Pay bills.
Good morning. For Kerr County, we have $76,422.99. The airport, $31,959.50. Fund 95, which is the 198th DA forfeiture, $71.61.
Move we pay the bills.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Moser, seconded by Commissioner Baloo to pay the bills as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, 5-0. Budget amendments. I saw a couple of those.
Yes, we have 3 today. They're all line item transfers in their respective departments. One for CES, non-departmental, and 198th District Court.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Harris to approve the budget amendments as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, 5-0. Late bills.
We have one for Fund 45, the district clerk revolving recurring account for $500.
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Harris and seconded by Commissioner Letts to approve the late bill as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, 5-0. Monthly reports
None.
and court orders.
Yes, we have court orders from the meeting on the 13th, I believe, and those are court orders 38178 through 38181. Then from on the 20th of July, 38182 through 38202, and then the 27th of July, 38182 through 38202. I move that we approve all of those court orders.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Harris to approve the court orders as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, 5-0. Information agenda, status reports from department heads. 3.2, status reports from elected officials. Oh, I'm sorry. Shane. I'm just in a fog. Sorry.
No problem. Just give you all an update on our fire panel. Our contractor working on it has found out that we've been having problems with when you hit silence, the strobes and the horns go off. The horns are supposed to go off, and the strobes are supposed to stay on. However, there's no state ruling that says, or code that has to do that. So what will happen is we'll have the yellow tag taken off, and our fire panel will get back to normal. The city can't enforce that because they don't have a code on that right now either. But they will adopt one as soon as they can, where when you push silence, the strobes stay on. Okay? And they can do that. So he's gonna let it go, no problem. But what will happen next is when we do a remodel, because that code will be in place, we will have to upgrade everything then and there, plus, let's say the remodel is $10,000, plus the cost of upgrading and getting all the horns and strobes installed in the building like it needs to be. Because right now, we have 4 to 5 different horns and strobes in the building, and when to do that upgrade, they all have to be compatible. They all have to be pretty much all the same kind of strobes and horns. So,
How many are in the building?
53. That's all 3 floors. So
You have a unit cost on it?
unit cost, the highball figure that he quoted me, without sitting down and going, each and every one of them, was $8,000 to go ahead and do that.
Oh, for everything?
Everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I was going to recommend.
Yeah.
I was going to recommend that since I have the money in my budget, we should go ahead and take care of that now instead of waiting later. When we have a remodel plus the $8,000 or whatever it is to get it done.
I agree.
I mean, if we're gonna, we need to be in compliance, so when they do the new code revision, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in trouble now. It's just if we ever do a remodel, then it's going to be required, and then we got whatever the cost of remodel plus, or however much more it is, a year or two now.
Well, let me ask this, these upgrades, basically what you're talking about, how new are they? Because things get upgraded again and again and again, so is this like state of the art up to this minute, or is this something we're waiting on revision in the next 18 months? You understand the question?
Yes, sir. I mean, they'll be up to date equipment. What is in here now is probably 15 to 20 years old in some cases, as far as the horns and strobes. And the rookie thing is that they're all different, different manufacturers. And for whatever reason, a lot of fire panels where you have different devices or different, it won't register at the panel like it should. I mean, it works, and if there's smoke in the building, it's going to set the alarms off. The fire marshal's point that he didn't really like was that when you hit silence, the horns and the strobes go off. And what he would like is when you hit silence, the strobes stay on. And he says, yeah, there's still a problem, but we haven't found what it is yet. And still there's showing a warning that there's still a potential problem. I mean, it's the same way at the jail right now. When you hit silence, the horns go off so you don't hear all that racket, but the strobes are on, the bright lights, and still it's letting people know there's a problem still. That's what the fire marshal would like to see, but he can't enforce that because there's no code on that to enforce it. So, which they, very soon, as soon as they can, they're going to adopt a new code where it's like that. But we're fine right now until we do a remodel, and then we'd have to upgrade. But instead of waiting until then, I have the money now, I was thinking maybe go ahead and do that.
The only other issue I'd say that we ran into when we did the jail, especially with different sounding sirens and different types of strobes, is there was a study out of, I think it was Herman's Hospital in Houston, that those differences can make people go into seizures that are prone for seizures, such as epilepsy and stuff like that. And that's why we had to upgrade everything to get everything that sounds alike and looks alike. And I think that should be taken into consideration.
So that's where we're at on that.
Sounds good.
Just a quick update on the recycle trailers. For this month alone, we're up like 10,000 pounds. But normally we're running anywhere from 12 to 16,000 pounds of recycle a month. this month, or for the month of July, we had 26,204 pounds and the majority of that was 19,360 pounds at Hayes Street, or near the shop.
It was all Amazon boxes, wasn't it?
There were a lot of boxes.
A lot of boxes.
Yeah, it's pretty much a steady stream. And the Hayes Street location, we're having to empty that daily without fail.
Right.
So that just.
Shane, the recycle event was canceled in the spring, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be canceled in the fall? I've had a lot of people call wanting to know when we can send it up to recycle.
I haven't heard that. I think
It's tentative for the fall, but we haven't set an official date.
Can you get with the city? Don't we coordinate with the city on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Coordinate with the city and see if we can get that date and let the public know when that's going to be and if or we're going to do it.
And
This is all
encourage to have one.
that we
Right.
need to do it.
Yeah, we need to have
This
it.
is the hazardous
Yeah.
waste only.
and that's usually held at the event center.
Yeah.
Event center, and there's not a lot
Yeah,
going
handle
on out
pretty
there
quick.
right now.
And people just drive through, so it
Drive
shouldn't
it,
be
drop
a-
it off. It goes quick, but others have had, I know the one in the spring was canceled and this one would be good if we could get it on.
The only other thing Shane had brought up, I think needs to, is he did get prices on moving that generator, hooking it up.
Yeah.
And they are way above budget. If you take the generator we have out there, the old one, which he does have somebody come up to start it, because it hadn't been started since it was disconnected and all that. Start it, run it, make sure it's still okay. That's a 250 kW generator, which was done this entire courthouse. And I think the ballpark was about 48,000 to move it and hook it up over here. Now, they also had another one, which was a 50 kW, which would only be enough to maybe run IT at the courthouse, brand new, for about 46,000. But either way, I only have 20,000 in the budget this year for doing any of that kind of stuff. We didn't think it would be anywhere near that, so I don't know.
Well, as I recall, I read the numbers, and it was 2,000 more, I think, roughly, to use the one you have, that we already have in-house. I have a lot more questions about that, why that, but that would run everything, that would run the whole courthouse.
Sure.
So it's worth the extra money.
If it's still, it hasn't
If it
been
runs-
started in
Yeah.
3 years, and the only thing I think they told Shane was, you gotta worry about the seals on that diesel, you know, make sure they're still good. But I still think Shane needs some kind of guidance, you know, like I said, there's 20 in my budget, is it something we're gonna
Get
talk
some more
about this
bids.
afternoon?
IT
We're
has,
looking at- that was what I
IT
said.
has money.
Get more bids.
Yeah.
And is it something we need to put off and look at for next year's
I don't
budget?
think so.
The prices that we got from that particular contractor, that didn't include the concrete pad that has to be set on, and that's also moving it from the jail to the courthouse.
Right.
So that's an extra added cost.
So get more bids.
What's the dimensions of that thing, ballpark?
It's
12 foot by 4
roughly
foot.
6 feet long, and what, about 10 feet long?
It's 12 by 4.
12 by 4?
Okay.
It falls under what we would have to take bids for, but we could get plenty of people.
Yeah, but it
bid on
exceeds the money we have.
Yeah.
So, independent of that.
Between what Bruce's department has and what Rusty's talking about, I think we have that covered.
But we might check out a few more sources.
But we probably should ask, get some better pricing.
Yeah.
I think the key is the machine still, I mean, we need to have the machine really looked at, the old one. Make sure it's a good machine, that it's
Without
worth
doubt.
spending that kind of money to move it. If not, go with one that just runs IT. That'd be my thought.
Well,
But you're talking about $2,000 difference, so it really is, it's critical that the one at the jail, the generator at the jail be really
good.
Let's get it checked out.
Yes, sir. I'm in the process of getting, since we hadn't used this particular company in 3 years, we had to fill out a new credit app.
Okay.
And in the process of getting that done. But the baseline price of doing a load test, they have to bring the equipment to do a load test, if it's not hooked up to anything, and fuel change, or fluids, filters, and that load test, we're looking right around $2,600.
Okay.
Let's work with him to do that.
Yeah.
That way, if we decide to not use it for whatever reason, then we can sell it. We can
Right.
have.
And you can, you
There you
know,
go.
that everything's been checked out.
Yep.
But the difference in the, you know, a brand new one, everybody likes that. It's got a warranty and all that sort of stuff. But this, so everybody will know, you can run the whole courthouse with one. You can run just one department with the other, which maintains our records and keeps everything safe, which is the whole reason this came up in the first place.
Well, a lot of the other reasons is all the electronic doors and all that we're talking about.
And that
is all over the courthouse.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd rather have one that runs the whole courthouse personally.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Been brought to my attention, I skipped 2.4, auditors reports. Did you have any, James?
No, sir.
I didn't think so, but we got it in the record. 3.3, status reports from liaison commissioners. Okay,
I think Shane gave mine.
then, do we need another break, or are we ready to go into executive session?
Just a short.
Okay, 5-minute break, we'll start back at 11:30. And we're going into executive session to discuss pending litigation and update on economic development. Okay, court is back in session. It is 11:59, and we have no action after executive session, so court is adjourned.